right. Hey, everyone. It is Lena Banks, certified financial planning professional and small business coach based here in Austin, Texas. We are back for season 2 of Financial Therapy, Minding Your Money. And I really hope that you had a chance over our little break to go back, listen to some of your favorite episodes. Please like, subscribe, send this link to whoever you think could use this information, and give us a review. Let us know what you think. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. We really could not do it without people who were interested to listen and are interested in this topic. So I'm really excited to be back for season 2. We're going to kick it off with a really interesting episode here. In season 1, we had 2 episodes about the affordability crisis. We started with drowning in debt, and then we moved on to What American Dream, where we talked about the difficulty people are having just purchasing a home, purchasing a car, feeding their families, and the headlines keep on coming. So the reason why this matters is that indebtedness, being unable to pay your bills on a regular basis, was associated with 90% increase in the odds of being diagnosed with a psychiatric disorder. And it was associated with a 31% increase in the odds of high blood pressure, a chronic illness. So when we're talking about minding your money, what we're really talking about is minding your well-being. And I hope that that's coming across to everyone. We tend to be really optimistic about our finances until we're not. And unfortunately, that can lead to a lot of holding in some of the concerns that we have instead of appropriately looking at them, moving ourselves forward, taking the time to really see how it's affecting our mental health and wellness. And that's what this podcast is all about. It's about taking it out of the shadows a little bit and having the conversations that we desperately need to have. So I'm really excited to be back for season 2. As I said, we're going to start this season with another affordability episode. And I've entitled this one, The Affordability Crisis on Borrowed Time. And the reason why I've done that is because so much of what's happening right now, there are so many new vehicles and tools for essentially maybe not going into debt in order to pay our immediate bills, but we're borrowing from ourselves. We're mortgaging our future ability to pay for things in order to pay basic bills today. And so everything from gas prices to food to building materials to all sorts of things are inflated in price. We're not earning more as a country. And so this is becoming more and more of a crisis of confidence in the economy, of stability for us and our families. And as I said, we're kind of taking from our future financial wellness in order to take care of today's needs. And again, that can be just fine until it's not. So today we're going to talk about 4 ways that things have kind of shifted in the last several years where I think we need to have a conversation about what we're actually doing with our dollars here. So I did pull a couple of headlines. The first one was Walmart sees troubling shift in consumer behavior. At a time when consumers are feeling stretched to the limit, retailers are adapting and changing their strategies to try to attract new customers. Walmart isn't necessarily trying to target higher earners. Rather, higher earners seem to be flocking there, and the company has seen shoppers across income levels become more price conscious, with many prioritizing value and convenience. This quarter, Walmart's representative said, the majority of our share gains come from households making more than $100,000 per year. So this means to me that even when you have a job and you have a reliable source of income, or when you have savings, people are really having to adapt and change their lifestyles in order to make ends meet. And so today we're talking about several ways that people with options and with resources are essentially borrowing from themselves or from their future rather than necessarily going into debt. And even though that might be more advisable than a high interest loan or debt like credit cards, it's still important to talk about this too, because it can be costing us to take banks, employers, and lenders up on these new offers of different versions of extending credit. And unless you're looking at these options from all angles, you may be mortgaging your future, but just in a different way. And so we're going to talk about 4 different then and nows for how this looks in today's modern economy. So the old way, the old way was payday loans. Everybody's heard of these. They typically had 200 to 300% interest. You could still get a payday loan out there, I'm sure. You have monthly time to pay. It's not intended for long-term use, and deliberate action has to be taken to get those dollars. It usually involves some sort of a process that was requested. You go to, a pawn shop or a payday loan place and you get some sort of loan. The new way is early payday. And I know that you guys have seen these ads, these advertisements. Your employer might offer it if they are a large enough employer. It's become a booming employee benefit at the heart of America's affordability debate. Because if you need that paycheck just a few days sooner, there are organizations, companies, banks, lenders who are more than happy to oblige. And so the employee benefit known as earned wage access has become even more popular than 401k plan participation at some companies. Early access to pay is offered by many of the nation's biggest employers across major sectors of the economy, including Walmart, Amazon, Target, McDonald's, all of these different places, Bridgestone, AstraZeneca. And while free access to these services can alleviate the pain of waiting a few more days for your paycheck, and it rescues us all from the world of predatory payday loans, consumer advocates are really focusing in on this, and they say that it should be regulated as lending. And in many cases, employees are able to access their wages early, but it's not free. And the fact that it's not free is a really important concept, right? So the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau estimated that the number of transactions processed by these types of providers grew by over 90% from 2021 to 2022. And you know that things have only gotten worse in the last 4 years since then. So we are looking at exponential growth in this type of vehicle in order to provide early access to payment for your paycheck. And what's the opportunity cost? So for each one of these 4 ways that I'm talking about, that things have kind of shifted over the last several years, I want to talk about the old way, I want to talk about the new way, and I want to talk about the opportunity cost in going this new way, because 203% annual interest from a payday loan sounds really awful, but then if you translate that into what these early access plans are, earned wage access will typically charge you 1 to 2% of your pay, and if you annualize that, it's actually more expensive than your 200 or 300% annual payday loan interest. And so people are giving up 1 to 2% of their paycheck, and it's just gone. And to put that into perspective, if you paid 1% of your paycheck to get your money 3 days early every paycheck, and you get paid twice a month, you are paying the equivalent of 330% interest annualized. And so it doesn't mean you shouldn't take advantage of these options, but we should understand the opportunity cost and understand that it is essentially just the same as the old school payday loans. And so consumer advocates don't take issue with employees accessing their money for free, but we need to consider that most of these options are going to be charging you 1 to 2% of your paycheck in order to access that pay even a few days early. And so let's think about that. That's important. Okay, so it's not how the products are typically designed or used by employees, with many not necessarily using the paid options, or maybe they do have access to free options. But if you're paying those fees, if you're paying that product related fee, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau really feels, and I agree, that it should be regulated as if it is some type of lending, because that early access costs us big time. Okay, so that's the first trend of this new affordability crisis that's really picking up speed, is going from the old way, payday loans, to the new way, early payday, but ironically paying just the same amount in exorbitant interest and fees. So the next old way, new way is, the old way was layaway. Everybody knows what this is. You got payments over time. You pick out what you like. You put it in layaway and they bill you. You're paying for it periodically over time. And then when you get it all paid off, you finally get your good in hand. The new way is the buy now, pay later, or pay in installments right up front. And you get access to whatever it is that you're purchasing right up front. So that is a way that this is different. But this buy now, pay later literally seems to be everywhere. Of course, you don't get a hamburger today without paying quite a bit for that pleasure tomorrow. And so from NerdWallet, buy now, pay later services typically offer 0% interest on short-term pay in 4 plans, but longer financing can carry annual percentage rates ranging up to 36% or higher. And missed payments often result in late fees. Interest can accrue on some plans, making them potentially even more expensive than credit cards. And so this is a read the fine print sort of situation. If you can do buy now, pay later over 4 months and you're paying 0% interest, a lot of furniture stores do this, appliance places do that type of thing, then that's great. But if you get yourself into a position where you're paying 36% interest, or that interest is accruing, and if you miss a payment, it all comes due, that is huge. And so homeowners are adopting more and more this buy now, pay later sort of situation. And remember what I said at the start of the episode. What these tools are doing is for the people who actually have resources, the people who are making 6 figures. It's kind of alleviating a little bit of the pressure to pay cash, to put it on a credit card and pay that credit card off immediately. And so it's extending these kind of terms into our future and taking from ourselves. We're borrowing from ourselves, from our future ability to spend by doing some of these things. So homeowners are adopting buy now, pay later options. It's not just for the 18-year-olds who've never had a credit card. It's really come into the mainstream. And so even people who can afford a home are now using buy now, pay later as part of their digital wallets. And that does come with its own set of risks. According to JP Morgan Chase's Institute's research, first-time homebuyers who are frequent users of buy now, pay later services have an over 8% higher chance of missing a payment within a year of their purchases compared to people who rely on other methods to cover their shopping. And why does that matter, especially for first-time homebuyers or people who are setting themselves up? Well, I just mentioned the idea of buy now, pay later for appliances and furniture. Those are the types of things that you would typically see first-time homeowners invest in. And if you invest in buy now, pay later that has some more predatory long-term effects, you don't read the fine print, that can become very, very costly when you thought you were doing yourself a favor by kind of stretching things out. And so here's an excerpt from how buy now, pay later reveals the weakness of this economy. This is from the New Republic. The steady rise in use of buy now, pay later loans to cover basics like groceries and rent is a warning sign that working families are under real financial strain. Prices for essentials are climbing as a result of economic policies, wages that aren't keeping pace, and therefore hardworking Americans are being pushed into cycles of debt just to make ends meet. And so while you might be paying this stuff off, it really only takes one missed payment for kind of the house of cards to start tumbling down. A growing number of buy now, pay later companies are either currently offering or planning to offer an option to pay things like rent, and that can be obviously really dangerous as well. There are many downsides to the use of these products, and there are almost always hidden high costs for consumers. There's poor customer service, the prospect that they will damage your credit ratings, and encourage consumers to get involved in products and services outside of the buy now, pay later universe are all risks that come with that sort of buy now, pay later investment. And so opportunity cost. Well, I've just talked about the idea that if you miss one of those buy now, pay later payments, that can really cost you. But also, just like consumer credit cards can really affect your FICO and other credit scores, this is happening with FICO scores with buy now, pay later loans. And so FICO is now going to include buy now, pay later loans on credit reports, and that can significantly affect your credit score. It's a lot different than taking out a traditional loan or something like that, and so, or having a traditional credit card, because it really does signal that something is off with your cash flows that you would need to take advantage of those buy now, pay later options. So the national FICO score, or the 3-digit number used to summarize your credit report, and that goes up to 850 points, that is going to be significantly affected going forward by these types of loans. So things to think about when considering those types of solutions over credit cards or traditional loans, or even bare knuckling until your next paycheck, would be to think about or calculate the real interest rate or amount you're paying to access your own money. That's important. Again, paying 1% in order to access your paycheck a little bit early is just like a payday loan. So calculating the real interest rate for these buy now, pay later schemes, particularly if you are not necessarily cognizant about ensuring that you make those payments on time and in the fashion that you're supposed to, can be crucial to maintaining your creditworthiness and maintaining your credit scores, so that you can be you can go to a future lender for something that is really important and not just kind of that click to buy now, pay later type of situation. So there's an opportunity cost to this old way, layaway, versus the new way, buy now, pay later. Okay, Let's move on to another old way, new way. The old way for this was personal loans. They used to be a tried and true method for building your credit, getting access to cash, and as creditworthiness overall has just become more precarious, some personal loans are harder to get, or they come with double-digit interest rates, which people can not afford to pay interest on. So the new way that is exponentially catching fire is to take a loan from your 401k. And so this is an excerpt from the Wall Street Journal. Record numbers of workers are raiding their 401k savings. A divergent K economy where people who make more and have more resources are doing much better, and people who are making less or have less resources are trending downwards. A divergent economy has given people record retirement savings, some people, and also more of a need to dig into them. More Americans are digging into their retirement savings because of financial emergencies. Last year, in 2025, a record 6% of workers in 401k plans administered by Vanguard Group, but I'm sure that this trend could be seen across all 401k retirement plans, took a hardship withdrawal. So that is up from 4.8% in 2024 and a pre-pandemic average of only about 2%. So that's a 300% increase in the number of people pre-pandemic to last year who are taking hardship withdrawals from their 401ks. The data paint a financial picture of American workers' finances. While most are faring well, some are experiencing heightened financial stress, and these are people with resources that are able to tap into those resources. But again, we're borrowing from ourselves. We're mortgaging our future. The opportunity cost is obvious. You're missing out on carried interest for whatever you remove from your account, and you may be paying origination or other administrative fees to take out a loan, or you might have to pay the loan back ahead of schedule. You may also be paying penalties for the withdrawal if you don't pay it back or if you leave the company prior to repaying the loan. So on the upside, in many of these arrangements, the interest that you're paying on that 401k loan is actually going back into your account. So you're paying it to yourself. So that's why this could be a good financial tool for you. But in the interim, you are missing out on all of that investment income that you could be making when you take out that loan from your 401k. Your money can't work for you outside of that investment account. So, old way, a personal loan. New way, 401k loan that comes with a lot more risk to your future self than you might imagine. So, the last old way, new way. The old way was to do a pawn shop or get a title loan for your car. You put something up for collateral and you pay usually crazy amounts of interest to get your stuff back. And that was good for smaller purchases, but hardly ever long term. The new way that people are doing this is to put their home up for collateral. So HELOCs, home equity lines of credit, are huge these days. So according to MBA.org, HELOC usage is surging. HELOC originations rose by 8% in 2024, with total balances climbing to $9 billion in quarter four of 2024 alone. Total outstanding balances reached $433 billion by Q4 2025, marking 15 consecutive quarters of growth as homeowners step into record equity. That all sounds great. We had in Austin the biggest boom of folks coming in and buying homes that we've seen in quite a long time. I can tell you my home value over the course of 1 year went down by over 10%. So that's the risk. That's the opportunity cost in taking advantage of a HELOC, is that when you put your home up for collateral, you better hope that that home continues to increase in market value. Elsewise, you could end up underwater in a big way. And year over year, that borrowing power being reduced over time can eliminate that home as an asset that actually has equity associated with it. So there's more of a risk of being underwater in the future. Interest rates are still relatively high on these types of loan products. And so you have to do a little bit of math to understand whether this makes sense for you. The use of HELOCs is being primarily driven by millennials and Gen X, where average balances exceed $50,000. And they're largely used for home renovations, 46%, and debt consolidation, 39%. And again, that's a good thing, but it's maybe not a long-term sort of solution for that sort of debt that we've got going on, because you are, again, mortgaging your future, risking the idea that you would be underwater in your home, usually the biggest asset that any of us has, in order to pay down debt that you also are getting into because you're trying to pay basic bills and living expenses. So especially since many of us have gone through an incredible rise in real estate prices and values, it is relatively easy to look to your home to help pay for everything from home improvements to even higher property taxes. You bet on your home equity for the long term, but that can become a problem. So opportunity cost is spending that equity. Extracting from your home could eventually put you underwater. And because you have to eventually pay principal on the loan, you could find yourself at a convergence where you're not only underwater in your home, but you're also having cash flow problems because now you're having to pay the principal and the interest on the money that you've taken out of your home. And if you have done that for home improvements or something like that, and you're unable to sell your asset or to get money out of those home improvements to essentially justify having to pay more principal, more interest on what you've taken out in equity, that can become a real problem in the future. So we're mortgaging our future to just try and pay our bills today. And the really interesting thing about every single one of these ideas, the old way layaway, the new way doing a buy now, pay later sort of situation, the old way taking a payday loan, the new way getting an early payday, the old way taking a personal loan, the new way taking a loan from your 401k, the old way having some sort of collateral that you put up for money, the new way having that collateral be the home you live in. All of these things are so interesting to me because they are tools that people with resources are utilizing more and more often. And it is a gamble if you aren't thinking about the opportunity cost to each one of those activities. So I hope that this kind of got us thinking a little bit about all of these new vehicles for essentially getting money, making money, or not making money, but getting money in order to pay our bills. Because even though some of these are not necessarily putting you in debt, or putting you in what we would consider a bad debt situation in the past, like credit cards or things like that, they are still risky vehicles for creating cash flow to pay your bills. And so even though they are new vehicles, the newfangled fancy ways that people are actually accessing cash and making ends meet, we have to be careful because sometimes they can be just as risky or just as costly as those old ways that we would have blown off as irresponsible or not something that we would want to take the risk on. So this has been the affordability crisis on borrowed time, and it's all about thinking about how much you want to mortgage your future ability to save, invest, or pay for things that you need in order to meet immediate concerns. And sometimes it might be more prudent for us to reassess our budget, reassess what we're spending, and maybe do like some of these people are doing and going to the Dollar Tree, going to the Walmart, spending less on what we need right now in this moment where we can, instead of attempting to maintain a lifestyle that is no longer affordable for us. So thanks so much for listening in. Like I said at the start, please like, subscribe, give us a review wherever you're listening or watching. Share this podcast with a friend who you think would benefit from it. We will be back next week with another episode. It's going to be a really cool origin story, so I hope you'll tune